Hi, today we have James with us. James Law is the founder of James Law Cybertecture International, which is an international firm specializing in cybertecture, which he believes is the future of architecture. Welcome, James, to New Delhi. And today we would be talking to him about cybertecture, also the materials used in the tall buildings, and I would also like to touch on the cybertecture mirror, which you were talking about. So, James, to start with, how do you find New Delhi?
I think New Delhi is really fascinating. It's for me a city that has two sides to it. One is the colonial historical side, and I can really appreciate the amazing architecture as a capital city. But at the same time, I'm really seeing a huge amount of new development and new design happening on the outskirts of the city. So I think Delhi is pretty unique for me because it has both the history and the new.
Have you visited the historical architecture in and around New Delhi?
I haven't really had the opportunity yet. I am looking forward to it. I try always to spend a bit more time than just my meetings to try to explore the city and to understand more the actual culture of the place. I've really seen, just by driving past, some really beautiful buildings, both from yesteryear and also some of the newer buildings. I look forward to going to visit some of them.
Okay. So, from Surfaces Reporter, we suggest that it might be a little crowded, but do visit the old Delhi and the new Delhi together. But that's the charm of the place. Okay, the old and the new together, existing together. Okay, James, we have been hearing a lot about cybertecture. So, what is that cybertecture? What is cybertecture? How do you define it in short?
Well, cybertecture for me is a new kind of architecture. As an architect now working in the 21st century, I really feel that our role to design the buildings of the future should go beyond conventional architecture. We should look at buildings as almost like machines, which need new kinds of software, new kinds of applications, new kinds of materials, and new ways of using space. And I call this cybertecture because I really believe that the world is no longer just about the concrete, steel, and glass. I think it is about the bits and bytes and the information and the interactivity of the world. And whether we are making a building for living in or working in or playing in, I think a new kind of architecture is needed, and I call this cybertecture.
Is cybertecture more about being more interactive with the kind of the technology, more kind of touch system to make life more, exquisite? Is it so?
Part of it is. Part of it is how a human being uses a space inside the building, but also part of it is how the building itself is managed, or how it is built, or how it is organized. Interacting is one part that you can do with people using touchscreens and using projections. But then the building itself, the concept behind the building, could also be very interactive in terms of a building that is keeping itself safe, keeping itself well managed and clean, a building that's able to adapt to the weather, adapt to the conditions of the city, and communicate with the people around in the urban space around. That's also an interactive experience. In both cases, I think the building goes beyond the conventional building. It is both containing activity as well as communicating activity, and I think that's the next level of architecture that's going to come.
So, as we know that you are doing a number of projects in India, especially around Mumbai and the surroundings. So, which are the projects you are most hopeful about that, this is the kind of starting of cybertecture in India?
Well, we've just completed a number of projects. The biggest project we've just completed for the Vadra Group is the Capitol building, which is in the Bandra-Kurla complex area of Mumbai. It is a really vast office building, but it is a very iconic building that uses new construction techniques and also uses a new kind of architectural language in terms of creating an office. We've created there kind of an interactive egg as a giant iconic sculpture in the building that is also marking the space that is being used inside as the conference rooms. And every office there has its own green zone, which is a series of green balconies that is a part of the egg facing out from the building. This is one aspect of cybertecture that we brought to the building, because traditional offices are just about office space, but we've introduced some other activities such as clubs, such as restaurants, such as new security areas, new ways of using the space inside the building that will really kind of make it a very interesting building for people to work in. Other projects that we're doing include residential projects called Club Aquaria, which is up in the Borivali, which is a very beautiful kind of smooth building that looks like the petals of a leaf, and there's 2 towers. And in that building we're trying to promote a very modern way of living with Indian characteristics, where we use a lot of glass to allow the natural sunlight and the cross ventilation to come through, but then equip the building with the latest in building management, security systems, and an architecture which is very unique for, I think, a residential building, very modern, and taking people into a new kind of era of living.
Okay, fine. Talking about your the cybertecture mirror, okay, how do you think and in what ways cybertecture mirror is going to enhance the life of a person or a family living inside? Like, which are the areas or application areas where the cybertecture mirror would be touching, apart from just being a mirror and regulating the health and all that? Which are the other sectors?
The cybertecture mirror's intention is to really expand on the human experience of reflecting. We are reflecting every day in a mirror, and like you say, we can see some information in the mirror now with the cybertecture mirror, but more importantly we are trying to make it into kind of like a digital window into a kind of virtual life. So in the reflection now we can have digital characters come up and teach you to exercise and to meditate. We have programs that allow the relationships and the ongoing health of the family to be shared with each other, so we can take care of each other better. In the times to come, we hope to develop other applications that rely off the reflection of the mirror. For example, it will help you to see different ways of doing cosmetics. It may help you to assess the state of your face, so in terms of how tired you are, how you can de-stress yourself, etc. Or because of the fact that it is a mirror. And I think it's a very exciting development for us, because although we are architects, fundamentally we have taken our first bold step into creating things beyond the building. We're now creating an object, a device, a product that will enhance the spatial experience of a building. So the mirrors in our building should be more than just a reflection. It should be a digital reflection.
Okay, that's great. So are you thinking of taking this cybertecture mirror beyond the home, even to the exteriors? Will it be functional in that way? Talking about, as it is telling us about the condition of our health or anything like that, is it going to say something about the building as well? Is it possible?
I think you've come across a very good idea. I think we see a lot of glass curtain wall buildings which are reflective, and I think in a way, if those buildings are reflecting the city but then also can enhance the reflection of the city with some interactive information, I think it would be really fantastic. I think gone are the days when a building will always look the same every moment of every day and every year. I think we are coming to an era where architecture is about changing its face, changing its look, and a reflection that is able to both be a reflected image as well as an enhanced image is the possibility of an architecture of glass that is going beyond. So
most of your buildings seem to be iconic in design. Okay, they're different, they're sort of innovative, and the kind of the designs, the cybertecture egg and all these things that you are showing, columnless and all that. So what are the materials you suggest for this kind of things? Are there some new materials that we'll be seeing in this kind of buildings, or the same, what are the materials basically?
Yes, definitely. I think the architecture of cybertecture buildings is going to rely much more on the materials that are very new to the construction industry. For example, some of the lighter polymer plastics, which are often now used in products and also on planes and on ships, will start to be introduced in buildings, because we are going to be designing and building buildings almost like products themselves. we'll be using a lot of what we call invisible materials. Those invisible materials are almost like force fields or light that is able to change the character of a space. We can already see that in available technologies like LED, but in the years to come, there will be other things like holograms. We will have new ways in which we can change the material look of a space depending on the needs. I think there'll be a lot more use of metal construction, because metal brings a lot of benefit in terms of the weight to the strength ratio of a building. So as our buildings get bigger, taller, wider, more cantilevers, we'll rely on some of these lighter materials like the steel. And then the cladding of a building, which has traditionally moved from stone to concrete to glass, will start to move into other material samples. For example, being cladded in natural materials like grass or even in mud is one innovation. But then the other very kind of advanced kind of way is that they might become, just curtains of air or curtains of light, which one day will be able to define the elevational look of a building. So really, there's a lot of possibilities in terms of the potentials of the look of architecture through the materials that we use. As these materials becomes available and they become more and more accepted, I really see that the face of architecture changing because the materials have changed.
Great, James. I remember you have once commented about the future of facades. You said that there will be no facade and just an envelope of air. Okay, do you mean some kind of magnetic fields created? Do you visualize things in that way?
Yes, I mean conceivably it is possible to protect people not using physical materials. For example, we often walk into a shopping mall where we have an air curtain. And that air curtain can keep the cool air conditioning in and keep the hot air out. That is already one kind of non-material way of creating a wall. And there are many, many other forms of non-materiality that might start to be introduced into architecture. Fundamentally, when we define architecture, is about the enclosure of space. And that space doesn't have to be physical materials. It can be made by lasers, visually. It can be made by, like I said, vapor. It can be made by air. It can be made by ice. It can be made by water. Really, the architecture of tomorrow has a much wider spectrum of possibilities. And maybe we might even create an invisible architecture one day, where we can, at a press of a button, it gets zoomed into a suitcase, and then when we go somewhere, we can just project this building out again, and we've carried our home and our building to another location. We mustn't rule out these possibilities, because the future is infinite, and if we're innovative, I think we can certainly achieve some of these breakthroughs.
So have you used a sort of material like ETFE, which is quite popular in Europe and all? So are we going to see some buildings in ETFE cladded or something in India?
Yeah. Yes, ETFE is a material that we've used quite commonly overseas, and at the moment we are looking at a project in India to try to do this. There are some obviously technical difficulties with ETFE in India. There's a lot of installation challenges and also a lot of maintenance challenges, but ETFE represents a different use of material on the facade, creating bubbles of air, which maintains the transparency, but then also introduces another insulation character to a building. And I really do see that there are some benefits of using ETFE in India, because then, I think it deals with some of the problems that glass can't deal with. But there are a lot of challenges to using ETFE as an air-inflated kind of facade. It needs a lot of careful maintenance, and as such, the actual building maintenance workload will have to be increased a lot, and we'll have to see which projects in India will best use ETFE.
Okay, thank you, James, for being with us, and I hope you have a great trip around New Delhi in and around, and may we see some good projects, your projects in India, in this northern part of India.
Thank you very much for interviewing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.